most Americans can agree on is that they don't like to see the government shut down. That's according to polls. Also, when you look at polls, they're taking the temperature of the blame game here. And more Americans are blaming Trump as well as Republicans for the shutdown opposed to Democrats. Democrats are still shouldering a lot of the blame too, but more Americans point the finger at President Trump as well as Republicans. Do you think Republicans are winning this messaging battle here?
Well, I disagree wholeheartedly with that premise because CNN just did a poll as recently as last week and said that the Democrats are more to blame. I was just out in the field and we just did a poll that said the Democrats are more to blame. In fact, more than 6 points it moved negatively towards Democrats. So my point with the polling is nobody wins in a government shutdown. That's why Republicans want to keep the government open, because the only people that lose in a government shutdown are the hardworking Americans, not to mention what happens economically. I mean, look at what we're losing every week economically, right? If air traffic controllers, like Sean Duffy talked about, begin closing air traffic in certain regions, tell me the economic effect that that's going to have on the economy. I can definitely tell you it's not going to be positive. So I don't agree with the premise. I think the only people that lose are the American people.
Let's talk about those impacts here. I'll start with Transportation Secretary Duffy, his remarks. He said today that we could see mass chaos if the shutdown goes on for another week. You'll see mass flight delays, you'll see mass cancellations, and you may see us close certain parts of the airspace because we just cannot manage it. It's almost Thanksgiving, then the holiday season is upon us. It's busy travel time. I mean, what do you make of that?
He's right. I mean, the number one job is we got to make sure that people are safe when they fly. And you have air traffic controllers, you have TSA agents that aren't getting paid right now but are asked to do their job. The economic impact on that will be great, not to mention the emotional impact. If you're trying to get home, for the holidays to see your loved ones, that's going to have an impact. And it's really not necessary, right? The Democrats voted 13 times as recently as March for this exact CR to keep the government open and funding. So it's really simple. Open the government and we don't need to worry about this.
And speaking of Thanksgiving as well, I mean, it's a big food month, November, then December with the holidays as well. And the Trump administration's using contingency funding to issue half of SNAP benefits this month. They were cut in half to around 42 million Americans. That's 1 in 8 Americans who receive SNAP. Do you think that in this government shutdown fight, the poorest Americans here are caught in the crossfire? And what's your message to them?
Well, I've actually been out at some food banks, and it's not a pretty picture. In fact, the food bank that I was at, they had more cars than they've ever had before. And where we used to give 3 bags of potatoes, now we're only being able to give 2 bags of potatoes. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're a family that relies on that, that really hits home. So I think it hits those people disproportionately, the people that need it most. And you heard this number 2 person in the Democratic House say, I know there's going to be suffering. Catherine Clark said that, but we have to use their suffering as leverage, which I think is sickening. You should never use a shutdown for more wasteful government spending. And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. And it just makes me spitting mad. I got to tell you, it just makes me so angry to use the American people's suffering as leverage. That should never happen.
So then what do you think is next? What can the American people look out for next? How long do you think this will last? Because once the clock strikes midnight, this will be the longest government shutdown in American history.
Yeah, well, I'm optimistic that, like I said earlier, Chuck Schumer can, pound his chest and say I was part of the longest shutdown, and the radical base will have turned out for the elections today. So I think people will be in a different state of mind tomorrow and perhaps Thursday. You already see conversations talking right now. So I am optimistic that the end of this week, beginning of next week, I already see things starting to break and talks starting to happen that weren't happening, right? I also see a lot of union unions who typically aren't on the side of Republicans, but actually calling in an organized fashion, calling on the Democrats to open the government because a lot of their members are really hurting. So you're beginning to see some cracks in the system.